Hey Jews, we're going to continue learning the book of Esther from Laz so we can have a depth of understanding that helps us understand how this is relevant to us in our current reality, how we understand the story that we're reading in the Torah, or the parashah that we're reading in the Torah, or whatever we're doing there with the Torah, that the understanding is meaningful for us in order to help us, help the Jews of the time that we are in, which is right now, or at any time before that, where the Jews read the Torah and tried to gain an understanding of the wisdom, an understanding of the wisdom, a higher understanding, not a lower understanding of our reality based on things that we can see and we can know and we can experience, but a higher understanding of the wisdom of God that is helping tell the Jews of every time what's happening in reality, because the Jews are the nation of God. We got these laws to follow the laws. When we follow the laws, then this connection that we have between us and God is more obvious. When we break the laws, then we understand that there are consequences. So we read the book of Esther in order to understand what happened to them at that time, B'yamim hahem, B'zman hazeh, in this specific time of the calendar, which is Purim, because as we know, reality is 5-dimensional, 3 physical, 1 spiritual, and 1 is time. So at certain times in the year, there's a spiritual element to reality that is similar or the same, or it is meaningful. And so in Purim time, we see that when the Jews were in danger, what they did, they fasted and repented. We're learning about all of that right now. And that the result was that God did not let them be destroyed. And actually, they were returned to the land of Israel and they were able to build the second temple. So when we see now in our times, all that's happening to the Jews, all that's happening to the nation of Israel, then we should learn that we could do the same thing, and we should do the same thing, and we will get the same result. And in fact, this result that we are, quote unquote, waiting for, the redemption, which is actually the end of the story being told that God wrote here in the Torah of the nation of Israel, the Jews. This is the story of the Jews in the Torah. The ending to that story is the redemption, and we're here. So it's an auspicious time that the redemption could happen, is likely to happen, is probable now to happen. So what does that depend on? It depends on what we do, how we react to our reality. Our reality is becoming hostile to the Jews. This reminds me also, when I think about this, if you've seen that movie Inception, where when they, I don't know if you've seen it, but basically they create like this kind of this world, they build this world and then they go into it basically. And when the people in their world basically see them, they are hostile towards them. So it's like kind of the same thing in our reality. Like at a certain point, seems like over and over at certain times in history, the world is basically becomes hostile to the Jews. We are the main characters in the story. And when we see that all the other characters in the story become hostile to the Jews, to the nation of Israel, that means something. And what it means is that we need to return to God. We need to return to live by the laws. We can't be criminals of the Torah laws, because that's not going to go unnoticed. That's just the story. And we've been told so many times in different ways the same exact story in the Torah. Same thing, different ways. So same thing, different time. Same thing, different time. Same story, different time. Same story, same information, different time. This is the same story also, says Rabbi Victor Miller, of the Holocaust. Same story, different outcome, different outcome. So what we want to do is same story, same response, same outcome, but we want the third temple. So on March 13th, the 13th of Adar, this is an auspicious time that we can get a lot of spiritual benefit if we all fast on March 13th, the fast of Esther, which is the reason we are actually learning the book of Esther, not just to read it and to check that off our list for, well, we read it again, but in order to understand the importance and the urgency, basically, of fasting, repenting, and hopefully getting the end to our story, which is a good ending. So that is why we're doing any of this. And in fact, on Shabbat, I was reading the Shar HaBitachon. Bitachon is basically trust in God, how to trust God, really trust God. And so one of the examples that they gave there was the book of Esther, which we've talked about also when we just read that Mordecai told Esther that if she doesn't go in to the king, because she was a little bit hesitant because the king hadn't called for her in 30 days, that he says that if you don't go in, somebody else will save the Jews. Like somebody else will step into that role that's already been written. All the roles you may have heard, like the world is a stage and we're all actors. And in fact, the story has been written from beginning to middle to the end. The story has already been written. In fact, we also have all of the prophecies which tell the story of the Jews from towards the ending of the story. All the prophecies. The story has already been written. What is going to happen? The redemption. How does that happen? Depends on us. So one of the things that they said there in Shar HaBitachon is that we have to understand that nothing happens without God wanting it to happen and making it happen. That this world was created with certain laws in place and that everything is coded already. So depending on how the nation of Israel, the Jews, react to the stimuli to the information, to the story being told at that time, that's what happens. Either it happens like this redemption, let's say. Let's use the example of when the Jews came out of Egypt. We could have just simply, Exodus. We could have simply just gone into the land of Israel. But instead, and by the way, God has pre-planned all of the eventualities. So if we had done that, great. We would have just gone into the land of Israel and lived, and everything would have been fine. But instead, we sinned, we rebelled, we followed the Erev Rav, and we did the golden calf. So we did golden calf. Okay, so then we had to do 40 years in the desert. At which time, by the way, God provided for us. We can rely on that. And that's the lesson that we should learn. The lesson that they also gave there, like I said, was in the book of Esther, when Mordecai tells Esther that the Jews are going to survive. The nation of Israel is going to survive. If it's through you, it's through you. If it's not through you, you could be destroyed. So it's all of our free choice to determine how we get to this. How do we get to the redemption? How do we get to the end times? We're here. It would be great if we could all just realize that and understand that and make a good choice. Return to Hashem and he will return to us. Fast on the March 13th, the 13th of Adar, which is an auspicious time in our reality. We can show this higher level of understanding of the wisdom. We can show that we understand something finally after all of our history, that we do understand. We do understand what the difference between the Holocaust was and the difference between Purim was. The difference is that en masse, all of the nation was united under this, not united under anything else. And here, that did not happen. And currently, right now, it is not happening. Because the Jews, and I experienced this just the other day, where, people, Jews who do not know any Torah and do not follow the laws of Torah, including religious Jews, including people who wear kippah and whatever, and act all sorts of different ways that are not what the Torah is telling us how to act and how to behave. And they'll say, well, now in a time of war, we're going to be bickering about such things as how to act and how to behave. No, we should unite. We're in a time of war. We don't need more things to separate us. Let's just all agree to unite. Under what? Under the fact that we're all Jews because we say we're Jews? That's not showing any understanding of the wisdom. We unite under this. We unite under this. We unite here with God. We cry out to God all together at certain times. That's the uniting, not uniting under a minimum viable truth, which is what the other side of holiness does. There is one truth, one God, one nation of Israel, one story being told, only one story. Many different ways we can get to the end of our story. But the best way to get there is just to go straight there. Just to follow the laws, cry out to God, depend on God, and get there. Not all the broken paths that we have to do to eventually get there. Let's finish strong, Israel. Let's finish strong. Let's finish the story strong. Let's finally just repent, return to Hashem, and he will return to us. So Esther went in to the king. She went in through the 7 different doors that she had to get. Somehow she got there until she was standing right in front of King Ahasuerus, and she was very scared, but God was with her. So at that moment, there was a big silence. Everyone stood silently waiting for the king. That's where we left off. So 5:2. When the king saw Esther standing in the court, he approved of her, and he stretched forth the golden scepter that was in his hand. Esther approached him and touched the tip of the scepter. God, the King of the universe, saw Esther's plight as she stood in the court with a broken heart. He approved of her action. He granted her favor to save her from those who would take her life. Esther could hear the soldiers whispering. They were already dividing up her jewelry and deciding who would take her clothing. It was as if she had already been executed. The courtiers watched the unfolding drama. The king had turned his face from Esther and was not extending his scepter to her. The guards took their cue and came forth to execute her. Suddenly, Ahasuerus' face turned toward Esther. It was almost as if someone had given him a slap in the face. As he looked at her, he calmed down, gazing at her calm beauty had had a soothing effect on his nerves. Smiling, he stretched forth his golden scepter to Esther. 5:3. The king said to her, "What is it, Queen Esther? What do you want? Up to half the kingdom, and it shall be given to you." Trembling, the king got up from his throne and ran to Esther's side, supporting her in his arms. He said, "What is it, Queen Esther? Why did you place yourself in such jeopardy to come here now? My darling, do not be afraid to speak. You are my wife and queen. The rule of exclusion does not apply to you." Esther looked at the king, but could not open her mouth. Again, the king touched her head with his scepter and said, "Why are you afraid to speak to me?" "When I saw the king's face," she said, "I became totally dumbfounded. I have never seen such a majestic rage." His love aroused, the king began to tremble and weep. Faint with terror and weak from her fasting, Esther rested her head on the girl standing at her side. All the courtiers began to ask each other what it was that Esther was seeking from the king. Why is the king silent and upset? Regaining his composure, the king asked, "What is the matter, Queen Esther? Why do you look so bad? Why are you faint? What is your request? Obviously, you would not have endangered your life like this for nothing. You must have had some important request. Please tell me what it is. I will give you anything you ask for, even half the kingdom. The kingdom belongs to both of us, but I want to give half to you for your own, if that's what you want. But I will give you half for your own, if that's what you want. There is only one request that I would never grant anyone. Never ask me to rebuild the Jewish temple. I have made an oath that I would never rebuild it, even if it meant losing half my kingdom. If I rebuild the temple, the Jews will rebel and my kingdom will split in half. Other than that, I will give you anything that you request." 5:4. And just as an aside here, you see, all of the Jews want to build the temple. That is the goal of the Jews. We should probably not keep forgetting that. That should be our focus. That is what we want. That is what the information is here. That is our understanding. That is our tradition. That is why we do all of the holidays over and over and over, is try to remember, never forget that we are the nation of Israel. We are God's nation. We have these Torah laws. We should follow them. If we don't follow them, we are criminals. What the Jews want, what we have always wanted, is an end to our exile. What we need to focus on, what we should focus on, is getting the temple. What everybody else, all the 70 nations, of which we know exactly where they came from, and I went through this briefly also within this series of the book of Esther, what all of them want is for us not to build the temple. It's for us not to have this connection with God. It's for us not to follow the Torah laws. When we don't follow the Torah laws, God is mad at us. God allows us to be destroyed when we don't follow the Torah laws, when we create 200 years before the Holocaust, when we create different types of Jews, different laws for the Jews to follow, assimilate more, follow the 70 nations, create a whole country that has not the Torah laws for the Jews to follow. Again, golden calf stuff. Split your heart, not give all of your heart and all of your love and all of your devotion to God, but rather give it to other people, rebbes and tzaddikim and all sorts of different things. That is not this information. It's not. So what the Jews want is to build the temple. What they want is for the Jews not to build the temple. And we've seen also that Haman said that if we don't kill the Jews, it would be enough if we just had them assimilate. If they just don't follow the Torah laws, then God will assassinate them anyway. God will annihilate them by himself. Because God is the author of the story. The story can just end nicely for the Jews, or the story can keep on going throughout time, this way, that way, this way, that way, this way, that way. Exile after exile. Bad thing that happens to the Jews after bad thing that happens to the Jews. Or we can just jump into the story now, understand what every Jew should have understood all throughout the entire time, is that we need to follow the laws. We need to rely only and exclusively on Hashem, our God, God of our fathers, and also the creator of the entire reality, the author of the story. And that the story has one ending and one ending only, the redemption, the rebuilding of the third temple. How many Jews do that depends on us. So they don't want to build the temple. Esther said, 5:4, Esther said, if it pleases the king, let the king and Haman come to the feast that I have prepared for him. Hearing these words, Esther trembled inside. Did the king suspect that she was Jewish? Was Haman aware of her identity? Now is the time to allay suspicions. She said, to allay suspicion, she said, I do not want anything for myself, but if I have pleased the king, let the king and Haman come to a party that I have prepared. There I will speak further of my request. Esther realized how close she had come to being killed. It was only at the last minute that the king had extended the scepter to her. Now would not be the time to speak to the king about her people. Ahasuerus might become angry again. What if he agreed with Haman? Or he could say that it was enough that he spared my life. How dare I ask for the lives of my people? Better to invite the king to a party and get him in a good mood. By then he would forget her misdeed in coming to the throne room without an invitation. It would also give her a chance to restore her strength and composure so that she would be able to speak with the king calmly and properly. If she spoke to him now, Haman could get to him later and make him change his mind. Better to get him at a banquet. Perhaps the setting would remind him of how Haman convinced him to kill Vashti. Besides, when the king becomes drunk, he is very easily aroused. Remember how he killed Vashti in a fit of rage? Perhaps it would be possible to turn his drunken rage against Haman. Yes, invite Haman. Get him off guard. Let him not suspect that she is against him. Do not give him a chance to plot against her. Show him a little affection and special attention to arouse the king's jealousy. Esther knew how much Haman hated her. He had plotted to kill Vashti so that his daughter would become queen. She was a lovely girl, but had an accident at a critical moment and had been sent home in disgrace. She pooped her pants, remember? Haman was burning with frustration that the fruit of his plot had been Esther's becoming queen. Now, Esther had again usurped his authority by coming into the king without an invitation and getting away with it. Obviously, he was angry and frustrated. It would be best to do whatever possible to placate him. Yes, let the king come to the banquet that I have prepared for him, she said. Oh, yes, I have also been very ungrateful to Haman. If not for him also advising if not for his advice regarding Vashti, I would never have become queen. So let him also come to the banquet. Esther wanted to show Ahasuerus what a mistake he had made in giving Haman so much power. Even the queen now must show him respect. One by one, he was usurping prerogatives normally reserved exclusively for the king. Haman's only motive was to advance his own position. 5:5. The king said, have Haman hurry to do as Esther has said. The king and Haman came to the feast that Esther had made. If the feast is already prepared, said the king, then we must hurry and summon Haman, otherwise the meal will be ruined. He may go away and have to be brought all the way back. Let it be known that Haman is subordinate to the queen. The king gave orders that Haman not be summoned in the king's name, but in Esther's. Let Haman realize that he must obey the queen's orders. The king was not that pleased that Esther had invited Haman to sit together with them. But if that was what Esther desired, let it be carried out as rapidly as possible. Let him come with his retinue to honor Esther. Of course, at the feast itself, Haman would be alone. The king and Haman came to the feast that Esther had made. Haman's intent was not to obey Esther, but to eat and drink, and boast that all of the king's officials, Esther had invited no one but him. Although Esther made the meal, she did not partake, since she was still fasting. The king and Haman ate together while Esther acted as hostess. Hostess with the mostess. 5:6. The king said to Esther at the wine party, what do you want? It shall be given to you. What is your request? Up to half the kingdom, and it shall be done. When people drink together, the bond between them is strengthened. The king therefore tried to get Esther to drink with him. Feigning sickness, she demurred. She still would not break her fast. Ahasuerus and Haman heartily enjoyed the meal, while Esther looked on from the side. What do you want, Esther? Asked the king. I'll give it to you. Earlier I asked you what was the matter, and if you were feeling unwell. Your only answer was that I and Haman should come to this party. I have Haman here now. What do you request? Haman is the royal treasurer, and if you need money, he will give it to you immediately. Tell me what you lack, and you shall have it. I am sure that you did not do all of this for nothing. You would not have placed yourself in danger merely to have a party. I am sure that you want something important. For you to take such a risk, it must have been life or death matter, or else it must involve huge sums of money. Just tell me what you want, and you shall have it. If you wish to spare someone's life, it shall be granted to you. If you need money, take what you need, up to half the kingdom. If you need my help, I will do anything you ask. 5, 7, and 8. Esther replied and said, what I want and what I ask, if I have pleased the king, and if the king considers it good to grant my wish, let the king and Haman come to another party that I will make for them tomorrow. I will do as the king has said. I do not want half the kingdom. I do not need money. I only have one request. If I please the king, and if the king wants to grant my wish, I will only make one request now. Let the king and Haman come to a party that I will prepare for them tomorrow. Tomorrow I will do as the king has said and reveal my true request. I will also fulfill the king's desire and reveal my origin and birthplace. Esther wanted to make the king jealous of Haman. She therefore said that she had made the party for both of them, equally. She was no longer merely inviting Haman as an afterthought. Now she was specifically making the party for both of them, him and the king. Not wanting to anger the king, Esther said, if I have pleased the king, and if the king considers it beneficial to fulfill my wish, I only want to please the king and do what is beneficial for him. It is the king's desire. If it is the king's desire, then I will know that he looks upon me favorably. Esther knew that if she was together with the king 2 days in a row, his love for her would be reawakened. It would then be easier to get the king to do as she asked. Let the king not think that she wants anything from Haman. That was not why she had invited him to the feast. What she wanted could be given only by the king himself. 5:9. Haman went out that day happy with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai at the gate, and he did not even get up or move for him, Haman was furious with Mordecai. The decree had just been issued against the Jews, and now Esther was suddenly making parties and inviting him. It was all very suspicious. Therefore, when Haman went to the party, he was very apprehensive. What would Esther say to the king? Would she denounce him? Haman knew that he had much to hide. But now that the party was over and nothing untoward had happened, Haman was very happy. Not only had Esther not said anything bad about him, she even invited him back to another party. Maybe the queen was even fond of him. Everything was turning out just right. He was happy about the feast to which he was invited the next day, and in good spirits about the feast that he had just attended. No need to worry that something bad would happen at tomorrow's feast. Esther was not feeling well and could not eat today. She wants to make another feast tomorrow so that she will be able to eat and drink also. Haman was elated. Then Haman passed through the king's gate. There was Mordecai as usual. He did not get up as Haman passed by, nor did he make a gesture as a sign of respect. It was as if he had not even seen Haman. Filled with self-importance as he was at that moment, Haman felt it as a severe blow to his pride. Coming right after such a special attention on the part of the queen, it was particularly intolerable. One glance at Mordecai and his anger boiled over. Haman was very confused at Mordecai's action. The entire Jewish people was to be killed because of Mordecai, and because Mordecai had refused to bow. Still, he had the audacity not to bow or show respect. Perhaps he thought that he could make use of his connections with Esther to overturn the decree. Maybe that is why Mordecai was so smug. On the other hand, there was no sign that Esther had anything against him. She was showing him the greatest respect, inviting him to her most intimate parties with the king. Something was out of kilter, but Haman could not put his finger on it. What if something happened and the decree against the Jews was overturned? Mordecai would also live. Something would have to be done about him, something special. Before, it was beneath Haman to kill Mordecai alone. But now Mordecai would have to be singled out. He would have to be gotten rid of because before the time designated by the decree. It would not pay to take a chance. What is that Mordecai doing? Thought Haman. I can understand his refusal to bow because he is a Jew. But why does he not at least show some sign of respect? Why doesn't he at least move? That has nothing to do with his religion. He's stubborn and proud like all the other Jews. This is the same Mordecai who turns the head of the Jewish children. He sits at the head of the Supreme Council. What does he think? Who does he think he is? This was the day upon which Haman reached the zenith of his career. His joy, however, would be short-lived. His downfall was already imminent. Like we've said many times, before Haman even thought about killing the Jews, Esther was already in place to save the Jews. Nothing is happening randomly. Nothing ever happens randomly to the Jews. Nothing ever happens randomly without God's first knowing about it and second wanting it to happen. Nothing happens without God allowing it to happen or wanting it to happen from the beginning. 5:10. Haman held in his feelings and went home. He sent for his friends and his wife Zeresh. Haman was still confused. He did not know if Esther was encouraging Mordecai or not. He knew that messages had passed between them, but he could not find out anything of their content. There was no way of knowing if Esther was his ally or not. At first, he wanted to kill Mordecai immediately. A word to one of his guards, and it would be done. But then he held himself back. He would do nothing until he had gotten home and had time to discuss it with his wife. His wife, by the way, was a big sorcerer, or something like that. She was a disgusting person. Haman brooded over his bad luck, and as soon as he came home, he called for his wife and his advisors. He would have to figure out on whose side Esther was. Was she allied with Mordecai and working to overturn the decree? If there were danger that the decree could be repealed, what could Haman do to guarantee that Mordecai would not remain alive? 5:11. Haman told them of his great wealth and many sons and all the things that the king had done to advance him. as well as how the king had raised him above all the other nobles and servants of the king. Haman's advisors tried to calm him. Nothing more needed to be done. The decree was irrevocable. The letters were already sent out. When the time came, all the Jews would be killed. Why worry about Mordecai? He will get it with the rest of them. Almost patiently, Haman explained his position. How could an important person like himself be insulted every day and remain silent? 5:12 and 13. Haman said, also, Queen Esther invited no one else but me to come to her party with the king. Tomorrow, I am also invited to her with the king. But all of this is utterly worthless to me every time I see that Jew, Mordecai, sitting at the king's gate. I have so much good, but it is all worthless to me. None of it makes me happy. I'm so angry every time I see that Mordecai. I don't understand where he gets the nerve to act that way. I would like to remove him from his post at the king's gate. I can do it since he is under a death sentence. If I could kill him before the time came, nothing would make me happier. But I'm afraid. Esther grew up in his house, and she might find some excuse to take revenge against me if I kill Mordecai. I am not really afraid that she will have me demoted from my position. I'm extremely wealthy, and wealth is power. I can bribe my way around any opposition. Besides, I have many sons, all of whom have high positions in the government. Some of them are the king's own scribes, virtually running the government. Should I really fear that Esther will take away my position? I'm not afraid of women. It was I who advised the king to kill Vashti publicly in front of all of the court. Did the king even think of demoting me because of his love for Vashti? Women are mere playthings. They are not to be considered when important matters of state are at stake. Even if Esther wants to lower my position, she will not be able to. But why am I building up vain fantasies? Esther is not my enemy. She invited me together with the king to the party tomorrow. She thinks highly of me and may even be fond of me personally. Women can't resist me. The king thinks that she made the feast for him, but I know that she really made it for me. She only invited the king to avoid suspicion. So why worry about her trying to upset my plans? If that's what she wanted, she would have invited Mordecai or another official. Yes, I know that she did not join us at the meal today, but that was not because she didn't want to eat with me. Tomorrow she has invited me for another feast, and then she will also partake. I will win her over with my charm, and she'll forget about Mordecai completely. My mind should really be at ease, but everything is meaningless to me when I see Mordecai. If he's standing up when I pass by, he sits down in order to humiliate me. I cannot wait until the time comes. So we'll stop here for right now, and we will continue to contemplate what we've just learned. Again, the main thing is that the Jews want to build the temple. We literally should put that in our conscious minds, that all throughout the story of the Jews, all throughout our history, our one hope is to come back to Israel, to the land, to the Holy Land, and to build the temple. God will not allow that to happen when we are still criminals of the laws. He doesn't want a bunch of criminals here in the Holy Land. This is what we are seeing. We are seeing in real time what happens when Israel, the Holy Land of Israel, is like the number 2 spot for gay pride, for LGBTQ rights. We see what's happening. That's against the Torah. We see what's happening. Hopefully, we understand what's happening when on Simchat Torah, when the day on Shabbat, on that day when people are dancing around a statue of Buddha. We see the results. We should try to understand that properly and try to know that we cannot continue to break the laws. We cannot continue to go against what God has commanded us and what all of the Jews all throughout history have known and have understood and have tried to keep these laws, to keep separate, not to eat and drink with goyim, not to blend in, not to assimilate. That's not the point of being the Jew. That's not a point of the nation of Israel. That's not in the story. The story doesn't end where all the Jews assimilate and all the 70 nations live happily ever, side by side, and all is well. That's not the story. That's not in the end time prophecies. Opposite. The more the Jews blend in, the more the Jews take the laws of the 70 nations and keep on breaking the laws of God, the more bad things happen. That's in the prophecies. So what do we need to do? We need to have the conscious awareness of the fact that this whole story is coming to an end. We are here. We're only going to hear maximum, but at any time that the Jews get it together, unite, and call out to God, he will save us. And that will be the end of the story, and it will be good. We will build the third temple. Bezrat Hashem.